Hello and welcome to the Car Care Nut channel. Folks, today we have a 2022 Lexus LX600. And that is just a name for this car because this is actually the 300 series Land Cruiser in the US, dressed in a suit under the name of Lexus. In today's video, we're going to take a look at the Lexus. We're going to do a technical review. We're going to take a look at inside, outside to see how is the 300 series Land Cruiser in a suit doing in the new generation. But before we get started, if you're new to the channel, welcome. Consider subscribing to the channel. Check out some of my other videos. If you are a returning subscriber, well, thank you so much for watching another one of my videos. And without further ado, let's get right into it. Let's start with our technical review under the hood. One of the major changes in the new generation 300 series Land Cruiser and the Lexus LX is a new powertrain, an entire new powertrain. Not the four-wheel drive system, but let's dig in and you'll find out what. This is the new 3.5 or 3.4, depending who you ask, V35A FTS engine. This is a very similar engine to that of the Toyota Tundra, of the upcoming Toyota Sequoia, the 2023 Sequoia, and of the 2018 and up LS500. Now, the differences between this and the Tundra, and the differences between this and the LS500 are interesting because the LS500 has two separate intercoolers. This is a turbocharged engine. It has a liquid-to-air intercooler, which uses coolant to cool the charge, not air in the front. So in the LS500, it is two separate intercoolers for each bank. In the Tundra, it is one single intercooler, and that is the same thing here. We have a single intercooler at the top of the engine, so it's just underneath this engine cover, and that is what cools the charge. And another interesting thing that I expected to really see it in the LX600, just like the LS500, is the cooling system. So the LS500 does not have a thermostat. It has a coolant flow valve that sends coolant where it needs to go to warm up the engine rapidly. It is actually a very high-tech and cool system. The Tundra and the Sequoia does not have that. It just has an old-school thermostat that worked great 50 years ago and it still works today. This, equally the LX600, also has an old school thermostat. It's not an issue. It's actually a little bit on the old school side and keep things simple, but the coolant flow valve actually allows the engine to warm very quickly and very efficiently. Interesting that only the LS500 got that, not the LX600. But more about this engine briefly, because we've covered this engine a lot on this channel. This is V6 twin turbocharged direct injection and port injection at the same time. This uses Toyota's D4S, so you have direct injection when the conditions allow, and when you need port injection, you actually still have it. So you have best of both worlds. No carbon buildup, but you also have the benefits of direct injection. Now, the cooling system on this is interesting because you have two technically coolant systems. You see two caps right here. One of them is for the engine, the regular cooling for the engine, and one of them is actually for the turbo circuit or for the intercooler circuit. And the good news about this entire car here or truck, just like the previous LX and equally the Land Cruiser, everything you touch here, look at this massive radiator here. Things are just not the same here as the Tundra. The Tundra is very well made and everything, but this takes things to the next level. So I am very glad that they did not say, you know what, we're not going to carry that same theme of overbuilding everything. No, everything here is overbuilt. Everything you touch, even the plastics, they're extremely high quality and just different, unique, special, Land Cruiser special. And that is a very welcome thing that they're continuing on this theme that no other manufacturer today or for a very long time now has done. Moving over to the transmission, it is a 10-speed transmission. It's an all-new transmission. It's an ASIN transmission. It is shared with other models. This is similar to the one in the Tundra. For some reason, when driving this car, it seems to hunt for gears a little bit sometimes, jerks when shifting. Potentially this has to do with this specific car that we're driving here. But that was the only thing I noted. It's a very compact transmission. And when I say compact, doesn't mean it's tiny. It's still big, but for a 10-speed transmission to be the same size as a 6-speed transmission, that is pretty cool. So it is compact and lightweight. Something interesting about this transmission is what makes it cool and how these cars are starting to get a little bit better gas mileage. So it's a 10-speed transmission. 6 of those speeds are underdrive. Then 7th gear is direct drive, 1.0 ratio. And then you have 3 other overdrive gears. Pretty cool configuration. Usually, in the olden days, you used to have 1 overdrive and the rest were underdrive and you have direct. Here, you have 3 overdrive gears. Pretty cool. Moving over to the suspension, and this is where things stop being new and become business as usual, which some people will see it as a bad thing. I don't. Folks, this is the hallmark of a truck like this, reliability. The suspension is available in an optional AHC hydraulic suspension, adjustable height control. Now, this system, Toyota will say, or Lexus will say, oh, it's all new and redesigned and la, 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 la. Let's kind of translate that. It's exactly the same since the late 90s. And that's why these trucks are awesome, because there will never be a hydraulic suspension truck or car or anything that will be as reliable as this. Mercedes-Benz, if you are listening, you will never have this in your ABC system. You hear nightmares about ABC system with Mercedes-Benz and their leaks and expenses. Lexus, nothing. Majority of Lexus owners that drive these things, they don't even know they have hydraulic suspension because it just doesn't break. When you're 20 years old and the thing is 250,000 miles, you have a small leak, you fix it just like anything else and you're back on the road. It's the exact same system, folks. The only thing I notice is it is faster to go up and down, and that is the only improvement I see, as you're going to see right here. Moving over to the 4-wheel drive system, which is very important in a truck like this. This is a serious off-roading truck, folks. This is full-time 4-wheel drive, similar to the previous Line Cruiser and similar to a limited trim 4Runner. This has a Torsen limited slip center differential that is locking. Pretty cool. This has all the kit, nothing's optional. It has everything you need for off-roading, but it goes so much more than that. The system is pretty much old school, not much have changed with it. You have a front differential, rear differential, transfer case behind the transmission, bulletproof, not much have changed with these because if they work, don't fix it. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Toyota really does that well with trucks like this. Equally to the full-time, bulletproof, very capable transfer case, you have other systems. You have the multi-terrain select, you have the crawl control, which is essentially cruise control for off-roading. Very important feature in off-roading. This has it, but because it has that feature, we don't have an old school vacuum operated brake booster. This has hydraulic booster, because you need that for that traction control. So they ended up putting that, and that has been going on for a very long time. It is bulletproof at this point, really doesn't have issues. In the olden days, they used to have issues, not anymore. This is the kind of system you look at it, super complicated, but only Toyota and Lexus will find a way to make it last 20 years. The other change in the technical side of things is the power steering. Gone is the hydraulic power steering. We have an electric power steering. They have been out for a very long time. They don't have really issues. They're not unreliable, especially in Toyota Lexus land. The one thing about this is the motor that drives, that gives that assist, the power assist, is mounted on the rack and pinion. It is not mounted on the column like some Toyota and Lexus models. And that's really about it. And the only reason they did that change is for you to have active lane keep assist or lane tracing assist. Otherwise, you can't really control the steering if it's not electric. Otherwise, they would have probably kept it exactly the same. That's just how Toyota and Lexus does things. If it's not needed, we're not going to do it. And something that is interesting that they did not change, that is a little bit disappointing. DPMS sensor system. The sensors are old school. So around 2018, some Toyota and Lexus models switched to a newer system, newer style TPMS sensors, where the sensor and the valve stem are separate, and then you don't have to program them. You can just put the sensor, drive it for a bit, and it'll program itself. Well, this has the ancient style, the one that is one piece, and every time you want to replace a sensor, you have to physically program it. It's kind of a surprise that a high-end car does not get the latest and the greatest, but again, like I mentioned, Toyota is the kind of company, or Lexus as well, they're the same company, they don't change things unless they absolutely have to, because their sensors actually last a long time. Let's start our exterior review, and starting with the most distinguishable feature of the Lexus LX600. The grille. Folks, the spindle grille continues, unfortunately for some. Personally, I don't mind the spindle grille. However, usually they are pushed in and kind of recessed in, not as out in your face as this one. This one is actually raised, especially in the ultra luxury trim. This is the biggest spindle grille you can possibly get in any Lexus model. Some people do not like it, and unfortunately Lexus is kind of putting a deaf ear to that. I wish they would change it. I think it's time. Even though I personally like it, it is time to kind of do something about it. Maybe make it more subtle, a little bit less in your face, because this is a lot. The headlights are very sleek. They are multi-LED headlights. One thing about them that is kind of disappointing, they don't swivel, or at least they don't swivel as much. That is something that Lexus does here and there, even Toyota. I mean, you go buy a Corolla Cross at the upper trim, it has swiveling headlights. Your $128,000 top of the line SUV in Lexus doesn't. Interesting decision there, but something that is very unique about this and very Land Cruiser-like. If you look at the hood, you have this dip in the middle of the hood. Very interesting design. Actually, when you sit in the driver's seat, look at it, it almost looks like they made this dip to give you more visibility. If you're a shorter person like myself, it is a really cool and very wild design feature. I mean, it almost looks like the hood dips deeply here. Usually it has a subtle dip, but this is a massive dip. Very interesting design and very unique. Something like a throwback. This is a Land Cruiser, even though it says Lexus. Don't worry about that. This is a Land Cruiser. Moving over to the side profile of the Lexus LX600, it is less round and bubbly. That is one thing that was kind of a hallmark of the Land Cruiser, and it translated into the LX600. But in this, the bubble here is less subtle, especially in the back. It's almost not there. That big muscular design that they used to have is gone. We have in this ultra luxury trim 22-inch wheels. Interesting choice. It does look okay, but interesting choice because this is actually a little bit intruding on the ride quality. It's just too big of a wheel. But that's okay. That's one thing they went with. But the overall design is nice, it's subtle, it is conservative, and that is something that is big on the Land Cruiser. Now that front grille is not really conservative, so this kind of doesn't fit the full character of the Lexus model, but it is somewhat conservative. The running boards are huge, just like the previous one. They're really functional. They rob of your ground clearance a little bit, but with an AHC equipped model like this one, you can raise the truck up and it wouldn't be an issue if you are going off-roading, which is a big thing on this truck. In the back, things are interesting design-wise. Usually these used to be bubbled up, kind of resemblance of the Land Cruiser, but here things are flat and featureless. I mean, to a point, you look here, it almost looks like a minivan, a raised up minivan. There's absolutely nothing, no features at all. It's just flat down, and that's really it. I like the light bar. This is something Lexus has been doing, but it's not exclusive to the LX600. I love the Lexus word written out, not the logo. Looks very classy, it's a very nice font, but again, not exclusive to this. Gone is the split opening rear tailgate door. We have just a big old door that opens. But before we open it, there's one thing that I dislike here. Just like the 2021 Sienna and up, The bumper is tiny. There's no protrusion. There's no real estate between the car that is hitting this one and the door. As soon as you hit this, it's just going to hit the door. Not the best idea in the world, and the door hangs so low. And the reason they did this door so low is something that you'll see when we open the door. It's an automatic door, which is cool. In order to make the perfect compromise between not having the split door, but having a low enough load floor and having that area where you can sit down like you used to in the past, they made the bumper very low. It does have an upside where you still have this with a full opening door, but the downside is makes the door way too low, and any tiny impact will actually hit the door as well. Here you have plenty of space. In this ultra luxury edition, there is no third row seat because you have the reclining seat and all that nice stuff. We'll look at it in a bit, but you have no third row. But on the normal models, which are likely the more recommended ones, you have a third row seat, but it takes a lot of your cargo space here. That is one thing about it. I'll show you a picture right here how that looks. Otherwise, here things are very Land Cruiser-like. There's not much going on here. You have a power outlet right here, which is nice. And things are very standard and very LX600 and Land Cruiser-like. Then we look at the interior of the Lexus LX600. The first impression here is quality. Just like any Land Cruiser, just like any previous LX. I mean, all the materials here are extremely nice, but more important than just the materials, the fit and finish here is impeccable. That is something that is very welcome to see in 2022, because many cars they feel like they're zip tied together, they're glued together. Everything looks nice, but as soon as you look a little bit closer, fit finish is not there because they just want to get these cars out. This stays true to its statement of quality. Everything you touch is very high quality, but more important, even when you touch a plastic piece, it feels high quality, no creaks, no rattles, no nothing. And one thing that is unique to the Land Cruiser and to the Lexus LX600, the shape of the dash and how big it is. It's just a very tall dash, something you will see even in the 4Runner. It's a very small dash. You're close to the windshield. It's just a very different feeling than any SUV of this size that you'll sit in. And this is a very tall dash. It's just a unique design, and I love it. I love that I feel like I am sitting in a Land Cruiser. They did not try to take the Land Cruiser-ness out of this. It's still purpose-built tank. That's the best way to describe it. But that is all good, except when you start really looking into the details, and which brings us to the problem with this car. We're going to discuss the problem with this car in a little bit. But the interior choice of equipment is a little bit not so good, because I feel like they took a 300 series Land Cruiser and how do we make this better? That's a monumental task. You can't make a Land Cruiser better. That's the problem. So they did some interesting choices here. When I say interesting, not very good ones. You have the infotainment screen, and then you have another screen right underneath it. Now, the infotainment screen, it's not very big for a car of this price range in this segment, but it's okay. And the operating system here is epic. It is really good. This is the latest operating system that you find in the 2022 Tundra. You'll find the NX, the new NX. Very nice, very responsive. It is epic, but again, not exclusive. I mean, not even the font is different than the Tundra, not even the configuration, nothing. It is exactly the same. And then we move over to the tiny little screen underneath it. I mean, from here you can operate some of your climate control stuff, some of your four-wheel drive stuff, which is pretty cool. But the quality of the screen here and the quality of the screen at the top are night and day difference. The top screen is very responsive, very nice. The bottom screen, the graphics are not good, and it's a little laggy and slow. I don't know why they couldn't have just made one big screen to control all that, or better yet, get rid of this second screen, or do something better. It just feels rushed and not really thought out properly for a car of this stature. Then from there, you have some climate controls here. There are physical buttons, not everything. Some of it is still here, but at least you have some Newer cars are moving away from this, where everything is in the screen. This still kept true to its old school heritage by keeping this. Underneath that, you have your drive mode, your crawl control, and your multi-terrain select, which is really nice that this stuff is right in your face. You have your mode select, you have your 4 high, 4 low. Pretty cool that this is a very important features that didn't try to hide it. They're not trying to hide the identity of this truck. Underneath that is a welcome thing, which is the seat heating and cooled seats and the heated steering wheel controls. They're physical buttons, and they have the awesome automatic mode, which I wish every single car has. But again, we have to put a pause here. This is not exclusive to this. A lot of Lexus models have this. And then you move over to the gauge, and that's when things really take a bad turn. See, the 300 series Land Cruiser, it just has 2 gauges and a rather large screen. If I would describe it, it would look like a 2022 Camry XSE screen, the big screen. This one has a single screen and 4 gauges, mechanical gauges around it. I mean, this screen is so antiquated. I would have rather see 2 big gauges and a big screen in the middle, 2 mechanical gauges. This just looks out of place. It looks like it's borrowed from somebody else. And that's where we have some problems with this interior. The parts that are original to the Land Cruiser, they're epic. They're great. They feel very good. But everything that Lexus did to kind of change this a little bit just feels last minute additions, not really thought out very well, and that's when this becomes a problem. I mean, one example of this, things that they skipped over. This is a $128,000 car, and in Lexus's words, they're trying to compete with the likes of Mercedes GLS, Range Rover, and the likes. I mean, you have a manual shade for the sunroof. That is not the greatest idea. I mean, this is a very expensive car. Yes, you're paying that for the quality and the other stuff that Mercedes and Range Rover will never have. But things like this is what buyers look for in a car this expensive. Moving on from that, you have some controls here. Now you have electronic parking brake, of course. You have brake hold, you have center lock and diff, traction control, and then the AHC height controls, which are really cool. The center console opens from both sides, which is cool. But again, not exclusive. Something that is interesting and potentially exclusive. You have an opening in the back, so the rear passengers can open the center console. And just like the previous models, this is actually a cool box that you can use to chill your drinks, which is really nice. And then we move over to the back seat, and this is where things really take a downturn, if you would. Because you remember how I said everything that is Land Cruiser about this is really good, but everything that they kind of tacked on to make it a Lexus is not really done very well. Here, that is really apparent. Because this is the ultra luxury trim. Not a trim I'd recommend, by the way, because I don't know how many people in the US, at least, that are chauffeur-driven people. Even rich folks, you know, they like to drive their cars. But let's say you are. This would be the place to be in this car, like everybody would say, but I think there's so many compromises here because this was not done very well. It makes it not the place to be, honestly. If you're sitting upright, I don't have a lot of, I feel like cramped here. The screen is in my face, the seat is narrow, and it's just small. It's not really very well thought out. And then the first thing you do when you sit in a car like this, which is, it's a very comfortable seat, I'm gonna have to admit that. But you want to raise your shade. Again, $128,000 car. It's a manual shade, and it's kind of the angle that you have to do to raise it and lower it. It's a very uncomfortable angle. But that's okay. That's not the end of the world, although it is in a $128,000 car, but let's move past that. The position of the seat. It's way too high off the ground, and you see a physical hump in the floor. I don't know why they did that. If you couldn't fit the seat here, then don't make the whole trim. It's very claustrophobic here, and your headspace is tiny. If you're taller, I'm 5'8", I'm not tall, and I feel it very close. And if I lean my head to the side, I actually hit the roof. And the reason I hit the roof is there's vents that run here, so the roof is very low. It's not a good idea. But hey, It's not the end of the world, right? Because you can recline the seat. Well, let's do that and you'll see why we still have problems. Let's recline it and you'll see what I'm talking about. So when you press it, the front seat kind of goes away and I recline. It's great so far. I'm okay with that. But here's where the problems start. When you're reclined, this window becomes in your sight. This window has a shade, which is also manual. Extremely difficult to operate when you're leaned back like this. And the worst thing is, you only have a shade on this side, there's no shade on the other side. And then, if you are taller, your head is very close to the headliner. Even when you're reclined like this is just not a great idea, because this is not a car designed for the seat to be here. You can tell that this was a last-minute addition. And as cool as it looks on paper, the execution is not great because this was tacked on last minute. It was not something originally designed for it. And it just, I'm sorry, but it doesn't work well. Having a bench seat here works great, and it kind of takes away the major thing that this truck has that is not really well thought out. Because otherwise, this is a very nice place to be. Very, very nice materials and everything is solid. Everything you touch here is built like a tank, but the execution is not great. Let's talk about some things that I actually do not like about the Lexus LX600, and unfortunately they are a little bit major. I see the same problems that caused the sales of the Land Cruiser in the US to dwindle and then eventually fall out of production, and I see them here. What is the purpose of this truck? Is it an off-roader? Because if it is, you need to say that, and you need to option it accordingly. Is it a family hauler? Because if it is, it's, again, the option distribution is not really friendly for that. Or is this an ultra luxury full-size SUV? Because if that's what we're saying, that's what seems like Lexus is saying. It's not a very good one, because it seems like they did not study their buyers well. People who buy these ultra luxury SUVs that are this expensive, they don't care about reliability. And when you take the reliability out of the picture of the LX, it becomes weak, because they did not compromise in the reliability and durability in this for the sake of options and flashiness and cool. That's the biggest thing. You will never see in their advertising material that this is built like a tank. I dare them to use that word because they would be absolutely correct. But they don't. They advertise this as an ultra luxury SUV. But the problem is, as an ultra luxury SUV, is not very good compared to its competitors, because it's not thought out very well. The option distribution is not very good. And that's how you muddy up the most important thing about this truck. It is ultra durable. It is old school quality. Fit and finish is impeccable here. Things do not rattle. Things do not have gaps. It is impeccable. If you look at its competitors, they will have flashy options in your face, but if you really look close, things are glued and zip tied together, because there just is. Because they're disposable cars. This is not a disposable car, but it's being marketed as similarly disposable car. This is the problem. We do not identify what this car is. What is its distinguishing features from the rest? Don't tell me the latest technology and all this, because it just doesn't have it. Don't tell me it's the looks, because it's a very interestingly subtle look and purposefully subtle. Where this truck shines is reliability, but that's not being said. That's the problem. And we go back to the same thing. If you drive this truck for 2 weeks, you'll fall in love with it, because you will appreciate that old school built quality. They just don't make cars like this anymore. This is the only last example of that. But if nobody tells you, and you really take it for a spin around the block, you don't see it, you're going to just look at the gadgets, they're not good. And you're going to walk away and go buy yourself a disposable Mercedes. That's the problem with this. The mentality of Lexus when they advertise this and when they distribute their options is just not following the buyers and not focusing on what this truck is really good at. It's focusing on the latest and the greatest. And this is not it. So what is the final verdict on the Lexus LX600? If you are interested in buying one of these trucks, buy it for its reliability and its unbelievable build quality of the interior, especially the interior, not the latest and the greatest gadgets. This is a truck you do not lease. This is a truck you do not buy for 5 years and sell. This is a truck you buy and you keep for 20 plus years. You take care of it, you take care of the maintenance, and it will definitely take care of you. And you will be smiling as all your friends in the club driving loaner cars from Mercedes, because there's cars is constantly in the shop for something or another, while you keep driving your baby 20 years later. This is what this truck is. It's a tank on wheels, tank with leather seats. Yes, the options are compromised. The distribution of options is compromised. The transition from the 300 series Land Cruiser into the LX600 was not well executed. That's why perhaps the lower trims will make more sense. The base model and the premium, it will make a lot more sense than the upper trims, because then you start spending money and not really getting much in the sake of luxury, because that is not what this thing was meant to be. It is meant to be just old school reliability, old school quality. Everything you touch feels like it's never gonna break, and it never will. This is the special thing about this. So if you are after the latest and the greatest, go lease a Mercedes. You will be happy, and then as soon as it starts to break down, you throw it at them and get the latest and the greatest one again. If you want one tank that will take your family around safely, comfortably, and in ultra high quality materials, here's your truck. Folks, I hope this video is helpful, informative. I hope you learned something new. If you like it, consider giving it a thumbs up. If you're not a subscriber, consider subscribing to the channel. Check out some of my other videos. And until the next video, folks, may the Lord bless you and keep you, and you have yourself a wonderful day.